Good mornings, Titans Nation. It is draft day, and it is very early. It's 6 o'clock Central Time, and we are doing a show that I wanted to do a couple days ago, but I've been a little under the weather. So, hope you get showered and shaved, and I hope you got some mayo in your cup because it's time to tighten up. Today, we'll be posting that final mock draft that I've got going on, and then I'm going to talk about the Titans and specifically what they will do, who they will draft, and what Rand Carthon has got cooking. And then I'm going to do what I personally would do with those picks. Basically, how I did that is I took the consensus big board and I picked from there. But obviously, my first round mock is going to be slightly different because that's how I see it breaking down personally. So, if it's your first time checking us out, do us a couple things. Head over to YouTube, type in Glory Day Sports, find the channel, subscribe, and hop into that chat so you can join the conversation. But let's go ahead, and we're going to start with the first round today. And I see people joining us already, so thanks for hopping into the chat, guys. It is very early, and it's like waking up on Christmas morning, in my opinion. So let's start with these first 8 picks. So started off, we're keeping it pretty chalk with these quarterbacks. So Chicago grabbing Caleb Williams. Caleb, in my opinion, I don't like the word generational as far as talent goes. He's a very, very good quarterback, and I think he's probably the best to come out since probably Trevor Lawrence, and I think he's better than Trevor Lawrence. Talking off-platform, he's one of the greatest to ever do it at the collegiate level, in my opinion. He does have to refine his ability to work and maneuver from the pocket, but I think that is going to improve, and I think Chicago ultimately gets their guy, and they can finally have a good to great quarterback at the next level. Follow that with Jaden Daniels to Washington. I've seen the smoke and the mirrors and talk about Drake May moving back up to that 2 spot, but I've personally had Jaden Daniels ranked above Drake since the beginning of this draft cycle, and I don't see a reason in changing that now. I think Jaden is their guy. Will it work out? I don't know, but I do believe that's who they ultimately go with. And then the Patriots. I think Drake May just looks like a Patriots quarterback, in my opinion. I like the intangibles. I like the arm strength. I like the ability to maneuver the pocket. But I see him similarly to how I saw Will Levis coming out last season. He lost all of the talent around him, but he didn't do a good enough job to elevate the talent that he did have this past season. I think he could still very much be a successful quarterback, and I think it's viewed that I slight him, but I do have him ranked as a top 3 quarterback this season, and I don't see any reason why the Patriots would trade out of this spot. I know they've been a talked about candidate for that. And then Arizona. We're keeping it chalk with these first 4, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. to Arizona. You got to get Kyler Murray a weapon. This wouldn't surprise me if this is one of these teams that might have Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. like I do, but I think it might be a little bit too risky for that regime to go that route. If the Vikings are viewing a trade-up today, I think this could be the potential, pairing that 11th pick and that 23rd pick, if I remember right, to move up to 4. Ultimately, I don't think the offer's there, and I think they stick and pick, and they go Marvin Harrison Jr. And this is where it kind of gets a little crazy. So the New York Jets, obviously Aaron Rodgers is going to be healthy this season, to start the season at least. You got to protect him. The 2 tackles they got on their team, I believe, are both 33. Joe Alt is regarded as the top tackle prospect this season, and I think they move up from 10 to 5, switching with the Chargers, to ultimately cut the Giants and the Titans out from that potential pick. I think they view that as alt or bust for them. So they're going to move up 5 spots and grab Joe Alt, and I know that's going to hurt a lot of Titans fans, but ultimately it's the trade I see in this first 8 picks. And then the Giants, soul crushing to me. They grab Malik Neighbors at 6 to pair with Daniel Jones. Obviously there's not a fourth quarterback in this top 8, as you guys can see. I'm not a big JJ McCarthy believer, and I think it could ultimately fall similarly to how Will Levis got out of the first round last season, where we have this talk about, oh, he's going top three, he's going top four, and I've seen it where people have talked about him going to Chicago. I mean, it's gotten out of not being sane at this point. I ultimately don't see him going to the top eight, and I don't think a team is going to go and bet their farm on the fourth best quarterback in this draft cycle. So they go Malik Neighbors, and then Roma Dunze sitting there at 7. And I'm still doing backflips. I love Roma Dunze. He's my third wide receiver out of this grouping, but he is still a blue chip prospect. And that's what the Titans ultimately need to bring in regarding unless we trade back, which is still a very big possibility. But if Rome's there on the board, I think he fits what Callahan wants to do with this wide receiver core. He just, as a size to speed aspect, I think that's what he prefers. Now that's going to allow him to play from the slot. It's going to be Calvin Ridley. DeAndre Hopkins can move into the slot and have a renaissance like Larry Fitzgerald did late in his career from that position. Super happy with that pick, though. Obviously, tackle needs to be addressed later in the draft, though, so we'll get to that later. Atlanta at 8. The first defensive player coming off the board in Quinyon Mitchell. His ability to just mirror receivers, I think, has been proven through this draft cycle, and I think he has everything that you're wanting for in a cornerback. So I don't mind seeing him go from a top 8. And we're talking about big movers this past season. I mean, this is a guy that when we started this draft cycle was talked about as a mid second round pick. Now we're talking about in the top 8. So Quinyon Mitchell, from I believe interviews from the Senior Bowl to the Combine, has been nothing but amazing. So Atlanta gets their guy there at 8, and then we're going to hop into this next set of 8. And this is another big shakeup. We have the Bengals moving up from pick 18 to 9, swapping with that second first round pick of Chicago, and drafting potentially the last blue chip viewed player on most big boards, and that's Brock Bowers out of Georgia, a guy that's been amazing ever since he set foot there in Georgia. And I believe Cincinnati views their team as a potential Super Bowl contender this season, and they might just be one player away. I did make this mock before the Hendrickson trade request. The T. Higgins, I mean, he requested a trade two months ago. I don't see the disconnect in making that news again. He had already done it, but ultimately, I think probably both of them are still on the team. Trey Hendrickson, if they do move on from him, it's not a big deal in my opinion. I think getting Brock Bowers and adding another weapon to this offense with with Burrow and Chase, I think that's going to be a great offense. So I think they're going all in, and I think that window's open for a couple years. So I think I don't mind that at all. And then 10, the LAC, the Los Angeles Chargers, are moved back from 5 to 10. They got to get a weapon. I think they could go tackle here, and if they did, I think it would be a J.C. Latham to pair there on the right side. But I think they go ultimately Brian Thomas Jr., just another jump ball specialist. He is still refining his craft as a route runner, but the big playability is there, and you can't hate on that. And the next, we have J.J. McCarthy going to the Vikings, which I think has been paired more often than not. I think he is just Kirk Cousins in a bodysuit. I don't think he's going to be even as good as Kirk Cousins was, but I think he does enough for that offense to keep them relevant. But ultimately, I think after that maybe that fifth-year option, they might be back to square one. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. So Denver, they go in Jared Verse. They're getting another pass rusher. And obviously, you guys can see Dallas Turner down there. I went him over Dallas Turner here. I think a lot of teams could view Jared Verse as a better prospect. We're talking just speed to power as a rusher. I think Jared Verse is second to none in this class. I like his hand usage, and I think they get another guy on the edge. And then 13, They get their quarterback, and then Michael Penix Jr. I think this is the direction they want to go at 13. And we're talking this big cliff after JJ McCarthy. I don't see it that way. I view him as pretty much the same grouping as Michael Penix or even a Bo Nix. I actually have both of them over McCarthy. And I think some teams could view it that way as well. So I think Michael Penix Jr. paired in there with Devontae Adams. I think that's a great grouping. And then 14, maybe the pick of the draft. I have the Saints going Olu Fashanu. I mean, this is my tackle one, personally. I know that is a hot take, and most people won't view it that way, but I think giving Olu to this offense, they're still a couple years away, but I think it's a great pairing. And then the Colts sitting there at 15, go Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. I see what people see. I'm a little bit lower on Arnold, but I think he fits what the Colts want to do out there, and I don't mind that at all. And I think it's ultimately a good pick for them, even though I'm not as high on the player. But we're going back-to-back Alabama players here, and that's Dallas Turner falls to Seattle. They're at 16. Ultimately, I think Dallas is still refining some of his pass rushing skills and coming up with his game plan ahead of time. But the athletic traits are there, and there's no reason he can't put it together at the next level. So I don't mind that at all. But if you guys are checking us out for the first time, I see the chat still going up. People are waking up and joining us. Grab your coffee, sit on in. We got a great show for you. Head over there and subscribe on YouTube, retweet over on Twitter, do all the things. Coffee break. But that's the first half of the draft. And let's talk second half of the draft. So 17 through 24, we have the Jaguars here at 17, grabbing the Iowa high school long jump champ and Cooper DeJean. Probably a safety. I think he could play corner, but luckily for the Jags, they need both. So I think that's a perfect pairing, in my opinion. And Chicago sitting here at 18 now. Obviously, they got Caleb Williams. I think they need a interior pass rusher, and they have for many years now. And they tried to patch it up last season and it didn't work. So we're grabbing, ultimately, a lot of people's viewed IDL ones, and that's Byron Murphy. I mean, that's a perfect pairing, in my opinion. They might need some more weapons, but defense, as far as interior goes, got a lot better today, and the quarterback position got a hell of a lot better today. And then LA sitting there at 19, probably a little pissed. I think they go Jazon Newton. Johnny Newton there at 19 to ultimately be kind of that A.J. Brown, Treylon Burks replacement level. We're going from Aaron Donald to Johnny Newton. I think that's not fair to him, but I see the talent for Jazon, and I think he could be a great pro. I don't think he'll be Aaron Donald, but there's a gaping hole there on the interior for LA, and I think that ultimately solves it. 20, Pittsburgh Steelers here. We're going J.C. Latham. I think they are doing backflips there in Pittsburgh if this is how that plays out. J.C., I think, could kick out to the left side if he wanted to, but ultimately they've got maybe the best run blocker out of this tackle grouping, and he has lots of talent, and I think he will only continue to improve. When I view guys like JC or Mims, these huge tackles, it does scare me a little bit just because of their size. It seems like these huge tackle prospects just don't hold up for a longevity aspect. I mean, that's a lot of weight on your joints, and we see it with a lot of other tackles here in the past. So that is something that concerns me. JC ultimately hasn't had those issues like Mims sitting here at 21 with Miami. I mean, they're physical freaks, but I'm drafting for years down the line, not just for a one-year fix. So ultimately, We go J.C. Latham to Pittsburgh, and then Miami goes Amarius Mims, maybe the most physical freak out of this entire draft. I mean, if he stays healthy for them, Miami just got a lot better. 22. Philadelphia is going secondary, in my opinion. I don't know exactly which direction they're going to go. And based on their track record, maybe it's Kamari Lassiter, who I'm very high on, but I'm also very high on the guy they got here, and that's Kool-Aid McKinstry. Kool-Aid has been great this last 2 seasons and didn't fall off this past season, but he has fell down draft boards. And I think it's just more so how players have played at his position around him, other than him having a down year. So Kool-Aid to Philadelphia makes a lot of sense. And then 23, we got to get a pass blocker for Mr. JJ McCarthy, and that's Talisi Fawanga. There's an N in there, even though it is not spelled like that. It is pronounced that way. If you look at the pronunciation, Talisi Fawanga to Minnesota. So they're going offensive weapons with that 11 to 23. Don't mind that at all. And then the Cowboys are a very intriguing team. I think they could go a multitude of ways here. And Jerry Jones has shown in the past he's not afraid to go outside the box. But I think ultimately they go to receiver here. They go Ladd McConkey, and they pair him with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And Ladd is a very intriguing prospect in his own right. I see what other people see. I mean, he's a route savant. He's got the speed. He's got the intangibles. Ultimately, the health is probably the biggest concern out of him. But when you compare him to guys like Ricky Pearsall and other similar players that are going to be further down this road, I don't want to be the first guy to take a swing at the plate for one of those guys. I'd rather get one of those ones later in the draft who is a similar talent. But ultimately, let's hop into these last picks, 18 through 32, 25 through 32. We got Green Bay with Troy Fautanu, the tackle out of Washington, maybe the forgotten tackle prospect out of this grouping. He's good at everything, great at nothing. Similar to, in my opinion, a Joe Alt, who is probably just a step above in each of those aspects. But Troy Fautanu, I think, comes into Green Bay, gives Jordan Love a great pass protector. And I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we're looking at this draft class 10 years from now, and Troy's the best to come out of this group. I like everything that he has on paper. So they go Troy there. And the Buccaneers, they get a pass rusher. Latu. We're talking just pure pass rush game plan. He's probably the best in this class. Ultimately, I've kind of maybe soured on him a little bit. He was my edge 1 early in this draft process, but I've since dropped him down to edge 4. The back concerns aren't even the biggest part for me. Obviously, he was medically retired and has since come back once he transferred to UCLA. But watching him at the Senior Bowl was a huge concern for me, because that's the best talent that he's seen to this point, and he seemed to struggle with that. So maybe that's not the case in the next level, and he just needs a little bit more time to adapt. But if the medicals are fine, I don't see a way of him busting at the next level just because of his pass rush savant. He's got a game plan, and I think ultimately it could be a very good pick, but it's a very risky pick as well. And then Arizona, they're going cornerback here. They got the Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. They're going Nate Wiggins here out of Clemson, fastest corner out of this draft class. Nate's not a guy that I'm super high on just because of his size and everything and how he carries himself. But I think when I look at him, he looks like an Arizona cornerback to me. So ultimately, you go there. And then Buffalo, they're going wide receiver here. And I think this is one of the Texas receivers. I would not be surprised in the slightest if this is Xavier Worthy. Ultimately, I went A.D. Mitchell here. Obviously, it came out earlier this week that he's got diabetes. That's not a concern for me. I was kind of falling off on 80 since before that. This is a guy that Ladd McConkey ran out of town in Georgia. And there's certain points in his film that he looks like the best receiver in this draft class, but he doesn't do it on a consistent enough basis, and he never has. So ultimately, he has fell down my draft board, but the talent is there. It's just getting it out of him. And when I view the Bills and we're looking at these two receivers, I think this fits more of the Gabe Davis mold that they've lost, or the Stephon Diggs mold that they've lost. So ultimately, we go A.D. Mitchell here. And then Detroit, the rich get richer. They just throw Graham Barton out there on this already amazing offensive line, and he can play guard, he can play center, he can play tackle for him if you want to. I think this is just improving that offense even that much more. So they go Graham Barton, and even the jersey colors don't have to change all that much. And then Baltimore, here at 30, they go Troy Franklin. Another guy that I see it at times, but the slender frame, the lack of ball skills, I've ultimately dropped him down a little bit on my boards, but I still see it. And he looks like a Baltimore receiver, in my opinion. They pair him up with everybody else in that grouping, and ultimately, I'm sure he'll be okay, but I don't think this is a perennial 1,000-yard receiver by any means. 31, San Francisco. Trent Williams is getting older. I mean, it is what it is. Tyler Guyton, another Oklahoma prospect. I think that is the ultimate replacement for Trent Williams years from now. Tyler Guyton's got to have some time. Ultimately, I am not high on Guyton at all. As an Oklahoma fan, if Bill Bedenbaugh, Oklahoma's offensive line coach, couldn't coach him up to be a good prospect, I ultimately don't think it's going to happen. But maybe 3-4 years down the road, he can get these physical attributes that he has and put it all together at the next level. Maybe they flip him to the left side, but ultimately I have Walter Rouse over Tyler Guyton personally. That's coming from an Oklahoma fan, so buyers beware, but it makes sense for San Fran, and ultimately I know I'm a little bit lower on Guyton than others. And then lastly, pick of the draft, 32, Kansas City goes Jalen Polk out of Washington. I've seen, we're talking variance on a player. I've seen people view Polk as a first-round prospect. I've seen people view Polk as a fourth-round prospect. So he is all over the board. Ultimately, I think he has some of the best ball skills in this year's draft. The route running is still coming along. He's still a young prospect. And I think if he were to return to Washington for this season, I think we're viewing him similar to how we view Rome coming out this year. So I think Kansas City is buying in a year early, and they came out, I think it was yesterday, they were talking about Kadarius Toney is their best receiver, pure receiver they have on the team. Not no more. Jalen Polk is a better receiver in my opinion, and I'd be super happy if I was a Kansas City fan to get Polk there at 32. So that is my first round mock draft, final edition. So next, we're going to talk all 7 rounds, and we're going to talk about what the Titans are going to do, who they're going to draft. I got the script from the NFL, and this is what's going to happen. And then after that, I'm going to talk about what I would personally do. And we based this off the consensus big board. So ultimately, guys like Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. weren't available to be drafted there at 7, and we did that throughout all 7 rounds. So there might be some guys that you manipulate on the mock draft simulators that weren't there available for me to pick. And you guys saw my mock draft. Obviously, I have us taking Rome, another guy that I don't think is there on consensus, if I remember right. But ultimately, we went a different decision. So we're going to start with what the Titans will do. And we're going to throw that graphic up on the screen. So in the first, we're going Joe Alt. We're keeping it chalk. So Joe Alt, great prospect. I talk about how I have Olu over Joe Alt. They're literally 3 and 4 on my big board. So I would not be unhappy with the Joe Alt pick by any means, contrary to belief. I would love that pick. Joe Alt is a great prospect. The size does scare me a little bit. He uses his length too much, and if there are players that can take that advantage away from him, I think he might struggle at times. And I don't think he's a finished prospect by any means either. I think he's only going to improve his first couple seasons. This is a former tight end once he got to Notre Dame. So Joe Alt in the first round, and then Junior Colson in the second round there at 38. I don't like it, but reading the tea leaves, I think they love Junior Colson. And he's my linebacker one in this draft class. I think this is a reach by all accounts, though. But they get their green dot guy. Athletically, good, not great. A little stiff at times, but we're talking just pure run defense. I think he's the top of this class, and he's improving in pass coverage. You're not going to man-on-man with a tight end or a slot with him, but he does enough. He knows how to drop into his zones, and he knows how to cover, get up hands in lanes. In the fourth, Brendan Rice. This is the pick that I love. I love Brendan Rice. I don't see why other people are so low on him. He does everything good. He's a great route runner. He's good through playing through contact. He does all the little things, and you would expect that with Jerry being his dad, of course. But I think Brendan Rice could be he's a second round pick in my big board. So if you get them in the fourth, super happy with that. Jalen Simpson, they're in the fifth round out of Auburn, the safety. So Jalen Simpson, he's a $170 soaking wet. So he's going to be a liability in the run game as far as the safety goes. But when we're talking flowing from sideline to sideline, we're talking that deep third guy or that split safety. I think he's probably one of the best ones in this class. I'm talking ball skills, he's got it. But he is very, very slender. So ultimately, I have him personally a little bit lower than this on the big board, but I see how he could be viewed by Denard Wilson and how he would like to play him. And this is just a rotational safety at this point in the fifth round. So I wouldn't be mad at it. I see the vision. Next up, A.J. Barner, tight end out of Michigan. With Trevon Wesco stepping away, I think they need a blocking inline player. A.J. Barner is that. I think as far as like a run blocker this past season, he's probably the best run blocking tight end out there. He's still refining his route running, and he's never going to be a Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, etc. He's never going to be the receiver for you, which luckily you've already got two guys that are very good at that on this team. I think they could maybe wait a little bit longer at the tight end position personally, but A.J. Barner does make a lot of sense, and I think it's a guy that you would want to have in your locker room. So in the seventh, they're going Evan Anderson out of FAU. Evan Anderson is huge. He is a great DT. Didn't play at a high level, but I think he has all the physical traits. And with having only Jeffrey Simmons, Sebastian Joseph Day, Keandre Coburn, TK McClendon, there's not a lot of guys there with size. So ultimately, I had Evan Anderson here, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I love Evan. And then with the last pick, Keelan Robinson out of Texas. This is the backup running back behind Jonathan Brooks. Obviously, he's kind of been pushed down this depth chart with him and Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson from last season. So he's had time to develop. We're talking scat back. And with this new return role specialist with these new kickoff roles, I think Keelan could fill into that role very well. And he still offers you a scat back there on third down to pair with a Tony Pollard and a Tajay Spears. And ultimately, I think he usurps a Julius Chestnut or Hassan Haskins or whoever that's going to be. So they go Keelan there in the seventh. So that is what the Titans will do. So get ready. Joe Alt's going to be a Titan tonight. But ultimately, what I would personally do, let's throw up that graphic. So No trades. I took trades out of this. So Olu Fashanu there at 7. I think Olu is the best pass protector in this entire NFL draft, and I think he's only going to improve. We're talking just pure mirroring ability. Small hands do not scare me in the slightest. So I don't give a shit about run game. I'll be straight up and honest with you. He's going to get better at it, especially under big coach Bill Callahan. But I think when we look at this draft class 5 years from now, I think this guy is a perennial Pro Bowler and All-Pro. I think Olu is that dude. I know I'm on an island with that, but I think he's the best tackle in this class. And in the second round, we're going back-to-back tackles here. We're going Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU. So Kingsley has played on the left side this past season, and he improved down the stretch. He did, especially in that Oklahoma game, last game of the season. He played amazing. But the year that he had his best season was on the right side in 2022. So ultimately, we're going Olu on the left side, Kingsley on the right side. You've got your bookend tackles. You've got some athletes out there, and you pair both of them with a Kush and a Skoronski, and insert name here at right guard. If that's Daniel Brunskill or Dylan Radence, that overnight transforms your offensive line, and you have one of the best in this class. Ultimately, I think this is building blocks for the future, and Will Levis has got his guys out there. So first round, second round, going tackle. Maybe that's not the way a lot of people want to go, and it's not sexy by any means, but ultimately I think it's probably the best for Will Levis in his progression. And in the fourth round, this is the only pick that I have that was staying the same, and that's Brendan Rice. You'll see him again. I have Brendan Rice here in the fourth round as well. Don't mind that at all. And then in the fifth, Justin Obajobi out of Alabama, the edge flash IDL. So if you're a big fan of like a Darius Robinson there at 38, who ultimately was off the board when we picked Kingsley, Justin is very similarly built. He's a little bit bigger than Darius and not as long as Darius. It doesn't have the pass rush repertoire, but this is a guy that primarily played outside of the tackle box last season, but he's like 290. So this is the guy that you want to kick inside. And we're talking just pure rush defense. He's amazing. He's great. So this is a guy that you can play on the outside, maybe early downs, and kick inside to be an interior pass rusher, and then bring in another guy out there on the edge. And we've got some guys that we bring in later in this draft that we talk about as well. So ultimately in the fifth, Justin, happy with that. Alabama product. In the sixth, we have not addressed the linebacker grouping at all, and we haven't addressed the safety grouping at all. So we're going James Williams out of Miami. So 6'5", 215, played some linebacker at the Senior Bowl, liked what I saw. Ultimately, he played safety at Miami. If anything, you're getting a rotational player at both. He can play the linebacker specialist there on passing downs and kick into the box and still offer some versatility against the run. But early downs, you can play him in the box as a safety. And at that size, he's going to have that length to get into passing lanes. And James Williams, we're talking just pure highlights. I mean, great dude. He brings the thunder when he hits you. So James, ultimately, I don't know where he finalizes, and I don't know what you'd put him as positionally, but I think he fills a role, and especially with this Denard Wilson's defense, I think this can be a similar guy to Kyle Hamilton for him last season. He's not the athlete of Kyle, of course, but I see how he could fit into that mold and be a versatile chess piece for him. And first seventh round pick, we got Grayson Murphy, one of the twins. So Gabriel Murphy, probably the better of the two. But I don't want to be the guy to take the first one of these twins. They're very similar. I mean, they're identical, some would say. So Grayson wins more with power. Grayson wins more with power. Gabriel wins more with speed. They're very they have a great pass rush plan, and obviously they play with Latu as well. But Grayson is going to be a good pro. He has maybe not the athlete you would want there on the edge, but he's going to get to the quarterback, and I trust that. So getting him in the 7th, I don't mind that at all. And then the last pick of the draft, we're going Justin Rogers out of Auburn, similar to the Evan Anderson pick from what the Titans will do. Just a big body. You can throw him there as a nose, and he's just filling space. Pair him with Jeffrey Simmons, and ultimately you're just trying to get single looks for Jeffrey. And Justin, if he's going to be a run blocker or run defender for you, ultimately he's not going to be out there. He's not going to offer you anything as a pass rusher, and I'm fine with that. So ultimately we go Olufashanu, Kingsley Suamatia, Brendan Rice, Justin Majubi, James Williams, Grayson Murphy, and Justin Rogers. So that is how I see it playing out. So thanks for joining us today. I wanted to do this show a couple days ago, but I've been under the weather. This is the first day I've really been able to talk comfortably. So it's an exciting time to be a Titans fans, guys. Make sure you drop who you think the Titans are going to pick at 7 tonight. And we'll be doing a full recap for the Morning Glory show tomorrow. We moved this show for our normal time to tomorrow, so we could talk about and recap the first round and talk about what day 2 is going to look like for the Titans. So thanks for checking us out. We love you all, and we're continuing to grow, but it's going to be a good night tonight. We'll talk to you later. Peace.